Hi again, I'm Adam. Welcome back to engVid.com. Today's lesson is for the IELTS students who are going to be taking the IELTS test. It's for everybody, to be honest with you. This lesson is useful for anybody who needs to do some writing, but it's especially for those of you who are going to take the test. And because it's for the test, I'm going to start speaking in a little bit more natural speed. I'm going to kill two birds with one stone, get a little bit of listening practice and some information. Okay, so let's get started. IELTS Academic Task 1. What does this task ask you to do? It asks you to look at an infographic. What is an infographic? Information graphic. It's going to give you a bar chart, a graph, a diagram, a pie chart, a table, all kinds of things. It's going to ask you to take this graphic visual with whatever information is in it, convert it into words and sentences. Okay, very straightforward. Now, if you look on engVid.com, excuse me, Emma, a colleague of mine, did a very good lesson on how to score high on this task. Excuse me. Watch that video, but this is a little bit different. She was talking about how to write. I'm going to tell you what to write. Okay. One of the most difficult aspects of this task is looking at this information graphic and knowing what information to pick out and include in your report. Okay, and that's what it is. It's a report. Now, because we're talking about a report, it's very important to remember that a report is not an essay. It has very different structures. It has very different requirements. Okay, let's start. What are we going to write? They ask you to write a minimum of 150 words. Your target is 170 to 190. 150 is just not enough, and you don't want to go under, because why lose points that way? Aim for 170 to 190. You'll get everything you need to say. Now, let's look at the introduction. Okay? Very different from an essay. Your introduction is going to be very short, 1 to 2 sentences. Once you start your third sentence, you're saying too much. You're saying more than you need to say. What do you have to say in the introduction? What am I looking at? That's all they want you to do in the introduction. What am I looking at? I'm looking at a graph. I'm looking at a table. This table shows. This table demonstrates. This diagram shows, illustrates, demonstrates. You don't need that many words. Illustrates, demonstrates, shows. Whatever they wrote in the task, use one of the other words in your introduction. Okay? Basically, that's what you're doing. You're rephrasing the task. They tell you what you're looking at. They say, look at the following graph about this and that and summarize what it says. Okay. This graph shows blah, blah, blah. Okay? Now, I, me, we. This is a very common mistake people make. In your introduction, in your entire report for task 1, there should never be the word I. There should never be the word me or we. This is not about you. This is about the infographic only. Now, because it's not about you, there is absolutely no opinion. You will not reach any conclusions. You will not make an analysis. You will not try to understand what's going on. You will not make any inference. You will not take this information to understand other information. You will not make any predictions. Oh, what's going to happen after this information is explained? You're not going to explain anything. All you're going to do is show me what is in the infographic, right? Are you going to give me an explanation? Are you going to give me the meaning of what you're looking at? No, you're not. You are only going to give me facts, okay? I'm the grader, for example. I'm grading your task 1, your report. I don't care if you understand what you're looking at. All I care is that can you take this information and explain it to me in good English? This is an English test, not an intelligence test. It doesn't matter if you understand it or not. Can you convert the infographic into words and sentences? That's it. Now, having said that, keep your introduction, in fact, keep your whole report, but especially the introduction, very simple, very straightforward. You don't need fancy language. You don't need very high-end vocabulary. You just need to have different vocabulary. You need to have good sentence structures and give me the information that you see. Now, before I look at the body of the report, I want to actually look at the conclusion. Okay? You're going to have your introduction. You're going to have your body. What about the conclusion? Now, this is a bit of a trick question. Do you see all these things I wrote about the conclusion? That's what you're going to give me. Nothing. There is no conclusion in task 1 because you're not reaching any conclusions. You're not explaining anything. All you're doing is giving me information. You have an introduction paragraph, very short, 1 or 2 sentences. You have 1 or 2 body paragraphs. That's it, okay? Don't try to get too fancy. Don't try to show off your intelligence. That's not what they're looking for. English test, remember that, okay? Now, obviously the most important part, what do I put in the body? Let's look at that. Okay, we're gonna look at 2 things when we're looking at your report body. First, we're going to look at some things that you can look for, some things to pick out, some information to include in your report. And after that, we'll look at how to split up your 2 paragraphs or 1 paragraph, depending on the situation. So, what are some things to look for in your report? Let's say you're looking at graphs, okay? So first thing, always pay attention to your axes, your X, Y axes. What is the information here? What is the information here? What is going up here? What is going up here? With that in mind, what are the ranges? Let's say you're talking about time. You're talking about 1960 to 2010. You have a 50-year range. Make sure you mention that range if it's going all the way across. If it's a short range, mention that. But what about that range? What are you mentioning within that range? All kinds of things. Peaks and valleys. So again, let's go like this. This is a peak. This is a valley. Another way to look at it is highs and lows. If a graph is moving up and down, pay attention to the peaks, pay attention to the valleys. If it's very steady peaks and valleys, no problem. You can mention the stability aspect of it. Okay? Now, here I also mentioned plateaus. You're going up, 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 and flat. Up, 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 flat. This is a plateau. It means where things flatten out and stay stable, don't change too much. On this axis, okay? On this axis, everything continues forward. This is usually time or number of like increase in sales percentage, for example. It could be many things. This is any variable that can be. This is the range within which you measure things usually. Okay, peaks, valleys, highs, and lows. Now, you're also looking for patterns, how things are the same. Like if you're comparing 2 or 3 things or 5 things or 6 things, what are the patterns? What are they all doing the same? Trends is another way. All of them are trending up. All of them are trending down. Some are trending up, some are trending down. You're going to be comparing and contrasting. But you keep these very general, okay? If you're comparing 5 things and you find 4 of them share a pattern, don't talk about each of them individually. Put all 4 into one lump group. These 4 countries from the West are all increasing their military spending. The one country in the South is decreasing, okay? So the trends, lump them together. Then you look for the anomalies. Now, what is an anomaly? It's something out of the ordinary. If you have a pattern, everybody's going up, 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 but one is going down, that one is the anomaly. It is outside the pattern, outside the trend. Exception is another way to say anomaly. Something that goes against the trend. Here you will get a little bit more detailed and give me specific numbers or whatever the variables are to talk about how it is the exception. What is the exception? What is the change of direction? What is the pattern that the thing or the person or the place itself is following? Now, if you have tables, tables have columns and rows. Pay attention to the headings in the columns and the rows. They're going to tell you a lot of information. You might want to include that. You could just put that into your introduction if it's a very general thing. If it's very important to what's going on, you put that into your body as well. Now, if you're looking at a diagram, excuse me, a diagram usually shows a process or a cycle, a life cycle of an ant or a moth, okay? What you want to do is you want to identify the start of the cycle or the process. You want to identify the finish or the end of the process, and you want major steps along the way. You don't need to tell me every little bit of detail. Remember, it's 170 words. There's only so much you can say. Don't try to include everything. Major steps, milestones. What is a milestone? A milestone is when something reaches a specific point in a process. So a moth, for example, the mother moth or the adult moth lays eggs. That's one milestone. The eggs hatch into larvae. That's another milestone. 6 weeks pass by, they eat the leaves, blah, 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 little details, not so important. Next step, the larvae start building their cocoon around themselves. That's a milestone. Time goes by, they get fed, this and that, the other. And that next milestone, the cocoon opens, the wings come out. These are the steps you want to make. You don't want every little detail. Major steps and milestones. Now, when you're comparing things, you always look for the similarities and you always look for the differences. You are going to spend more words on the differences than you are on the similarities. Because the similarities, you can say all of them do this. One of them does this, this, and that in that specific order in this specific time. The differences are more detailed, the similarities are more general. Same as patterns and anomalies, it's the same idea. Okay? So these are all the things you're going to be looking for. Again, you don't need everything. You don't want to tell me what every piece of the puzzle is doing. So let's say you're comparing 5 different countries here. You don't want to tell me this country did this country did that, this country did this country did that, this country did that. No. A, you don't have time. B, you don't have space in terms of words. And C, it's not important. Okay? You want to tell me A, B, and C are doing this way. D is going the opposite way. That's what you want to tell me. Okay? So that's all the information you're going to look for. Now, how do you split up your paragraphs? Let's look at that. Okay, so now we have to think about how to split up our report. One of the problems people have is they don't know when to switch to a new paragraph, right? So again, there's no rule. You'll have to feel it out when you're doing it, but here's a suggestion. If you're only looking at one chart or one graph or one pie chart, table, etc., you can split it in 2 ways. One, in the first paragraph, look at all the trends, all the patterns, all the things that are basically similar. In the second paragraph, focus on the major differences, the anomalies and exceptions. Okay? That's the easiest way to split it. Another way is in your first paragraph, again, even in a table, you're going to have 2 or 3 things. In a graph, you're going to have 2 or 3 different things in it, different variables, etc. In first paragraph, focus on one thing, like you're comparing 2 countries. Focus on the first country, what it's doing in the graph. Second paragraph, focus on the second one. Okay? Again, it's a little bit straightforward, to be honest. Just say it simply what you're looking at. Focus on one, focus on the other. Now, if you have 2 charts, it's actually much easier when you're comparing charts. It takes you a little bit longer to get all the details and information, pick out all your trends and anomalies. But in the first paragraph, talk about chart 1. In the second paragraph, talk about chart 2 with slight comparisons as necessary. Or another way to do it, in the first paragraph, compare the 2 in terms of all the similarities, all the trends, all the things that they are doing similar. In the second paragraph, look at all the major differences. Now, some of them, one is going to be linked to the other. You're going to have, for example, the type of food eaten in one country and the agricultural expansion in this same country. How does one affect the other? The more food that's eaten, the more crops are grown. Okay? You have to make some sort of connection. Don't go beyond what is given to you. Okay? Don't bring your ideas into it. Even if you're correct, even if you're an economics major and this is all simple for you, you can take this little bit of information and write me a whole economic theory. Don't. That's not what they're asking you to do. 1, 2. This is happening at the same time this is happening. Okay? Even if it's very obvious, don't really mention any connection. One does not lead to the other. This happens at the same time this happens. Okay? Now, if you're talking about a diagram that shows like a life cycle, in this case, I would recommend 1 paragraph. Start, explain the major steps and the milestones, and finish. You don't need 2 paragraphs because there's nowhere to split it. A life cycle is a 1 process thing, right? The moth lays the eggs. Oh, actually, I'll do it another way. Here's the cycle. Lays the eggs, eggs become larvae, start building cocoon, hatch from the cocoon, feed for whatever, start all over again, lay eggs again. This is the cycle. This is 1 paragraph. There's nowhere to split this up. You don't have to have 3 paragraphs in the report. 2 are fine. You still have your introduction. What am I looking at? I'm looking at the life cycle of a moth. And then body, say what's going on. Now, when you've done all this, what do you have to do? Do you have to write your conclusion? Trick question. No, no conclusion. Once you've said everything there is to say, once all the information has been delivered, that's it. You're done. Go to your essay. Good luck with that. Okay? If you have any questions, you can go to engVid.com. I'll give you a little bit of a review quiz there. You can ask more questions, and I'll see you again soon.